I knew something was brewing the moment Derek strutted into the Atlanta conference room, grinning like he'd just closed a deal with the devil himself. That smug swagger meant one thing. He was about to dump another disaster in my lap and call it teamwork. But I wasn't even prepared for the email that landed in my inbox at 6:47 a.m. that Tuesday morning. Subject line: Revised pricing structure, confidential. No context, no heads-up call, just corporate speak for, we're about to screw over a client and you're going to smile while we do it. By that point, I'd already spent 3 months building the entire Pinnacle Industries training program from scratch. Custom modules, interactive assessments, data analytics dashboards that would make their head of operations weep with joy. I'd even created backup systems for their backup systems because I knew Derek treated preparation like it was contagious. My name is Jardnolita Rodriguez, and at 48 years old, I'd been the backbone of Apex Learning Solutions for 12 years. While Derek played golf with prospects, I built the engines that actually drove revenue. But loyalty means nothing when you're treated like overhead in a Armani suit. Still, I kept quiet. Like so many women my age, I had a mortgage in Buckhead, my daughter's college tuition, and my mother's assisted living to cover. You don't just walk away because someone disrespects you. You plan, you prepare, you wait for the right moment. The Pinnacle account was our crown jewel. Robert Sterling, CEO of Pinnacle Holdings, had flown in from Dallas specifically for this presentation. The man owned more manufacturing companies than I'd owned cars in my lifetime. And Derek decides to slash our fees by 30% without consulting me. Like we're running a clearance sale, not delivering enterprise-level training solutions. Marketing was clueless about the change. Legal said they'd circle back. Our VP of sales was somewhere in the Hamptons, naturally. The real slap in the face. I wasn't even invited to the client dinner the night before. Derek's name was plastered all over the presentation materials I'd created, the welcome packets I'd designed, even the follow-up surveys I'd programmed. I should have walked right then. But that's the trap, isn't it? You tell yourself, one more quarter, one more promotion, one more client win, and maybe they'll finally see your worth. The morning of the presentation, I arrived early to test the AV setup. The conference room wasn't empty. Robert Sterling sat at the head of the mahogany table, reviewing printed slides with laser focus. He looked up briefly when I entered. "Whoever built this framework knows what they're doing," he said, tapping the presentation deck. "These aren't cookie-cutter templates." Before I could respond, Derek burst through the door carrying 2 Starbucks cups. One labeled Robert, the other unmarked. Guess who went without caffeine that morning? I watched Derek fumble through his opening remarks like a freshman giving a book report on a novel he'd never read. That's when it hit me. He hadn't done any preparation. No research, no customization, just riding on my work like always. But this time would be different. This time I was done being invisible. On my way back from adjusting the projection screen, Derek cornered me near the supply closet with that reptilian smile I'd grown to despise. "Quick word," he whispered, his manicured hand gripping my forearm. I pulled back. Not aggressively, just enough to reclaim my personal space. "What's up, Derek? We're going to need you to run today's session," he said, glancing toward the conference room where Robert Sterling waited. "As a courtesy gesture. Think of it as relationship building." I stared at him. "You mean run the session I designed and built? For free?" He shrugged like he was asking me to grab coffee. "There's been pushback on our pricing. Corporate's getting squeamish about the premium rates. You understand." The heat started at the base of my neck and climbed straight to my temples. 12 years of this. 12 years of building his reputation while mine gathered dust in some forgotten file cabinet. "Let me get this straight," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You want me to deliver the flagship Pinnacle program? The one I researched, customized, and prepared, for nothing? After you unilaterally slashed our fees without consulting me?" Derek's voice dropped to a hiss. "Do it for the relationship, Jardnolita. Or pack up your things. Your call." Like he was offering me a sandwich instead of erasing months of work with casual arrogance. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead while I processed what he'd just said. 12 years of loyalty, expertise, and results, reduced to an ultimatum in a hallway that still smelled like fresh carpet and broken promises. I should have let him have it right there. Should have told him exactly where he could file his courtesy gesture. Instead, I nodded slowly, my expression calm as marble. Thanks for the clarity, Derek. I turned and walked back toward the conference room, my heels clicking against the polished concrete like a countdown timer. Behind me, I could practically hear Derek's sigh of relief. He thought he'd won. Inside the conference room, the energy had shifted. Pinnacle's executive team had arrived. Not the 3 people Derek mentioned, but 7 sharp-suited decision-makers who looked like they could smell incompetence from the parking garage. At the head of the table, Robert Sterling sat with the quiet authority of someone who'd built an empire by recognizing real talent when he saw it. He glanced up as I entered, those steel-gray eyes missing nothing. I walked to the front of the room and clicked the remote. My name filled the projection screen in bold letters. Jard Nolita Rodriguez, Senior Learning Strategist. I paused, then set the remote down with deliberate precision. Good morning, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room. I won't be delivering today's presentation. The silence was immediate and complete. One executive's pen froze mid-note. Through the glass wall, I could see Derek's face drain of color like someone had opened a valve. I've just been informed this session will be provided at no charge, I continued. Since I wasn't consulted on that arrangement, I'll be stepping away from the engagement. What happened next would change everything. The silence stretched like pulled taffy. 7 of Dallas's most powerful executives sat frozen, processing what I'd just said. One woman, Pinnacle so, based on her positioning at the table, slowly lowered her iPad. I didn't explain, didn't justify, didn't launch into the speech I'd rehearsed in my head for months about respect and professional standards. I simply picked up my leather portfolio, nodded once to Robert Sterling, and headed for the door. Excuse me, someone called out, but I was already moving. Past the fake ficus plants. Past the reception desk where Amanda's mouth fell open like a broken hinge. Past the elevator bank and straight into the humid Atlanta morning that felt like freedom for the first time in years. I'd made it exactly 4 steps toward my Honda Accord when I heard the glass doors swoosh open behind me. Jard Nolita. Robert Sterling's voice carried the kind of authority that made Fortune 500 competitors sweat during quarterly earnings calls. I turned around slowly, expecting damage control or polite dismissal. Instead, he held out a business card with the steady confidence of someone who'd just solved a puzzle. I had a feeling it wasn't Derek behind that work, he said. The research depth, the customization, the strategic framework. That wasn't his style. That had substance. He handed me the card. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from stress and caffeine withdrawal. Robert Sterling, Executive Chairman, Sterling Dynamics Group. Not just Pinnacle Industries. The parent company. The umbrella organization that owned 16 different enterprises across 3 states. We should talk, he continued. His Texas drawl measured and deliberate. And not as a courtesy. Then he turned and walked back toward the building like he hadn't just rewritten my entire career trajectory in 15 seconds. I stood in the parking lot, staring at that card like it might vanish if I blinked. Inside that glass tower, Derek was probably having a meltdown in front of Pinnacle's board. But I was outside, holding the first real opportunity I'd seen in over a decade. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Jard Nolita, Robert Sterling here. Can we set up a coffee meeting? Informal discussion about a potential consulting opportunity. We're exploring some organizational development initiatives that could use your expertise. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Peachtree Coffee downtown. I screenshot the message, then screenshot it again to make sure it was real. The business card in my other hand still read, Executive Chairman, Sterling Dynamics Group. Not just the subsidiary that Derek had been courting for months. The entire empire. I drove home through Atlanta traffic with the radio off, my mind spinning like a Formula One engine. Derek's panicked expression kept replaying, mouth hanging open, eyes darting around the room like he was looking for an escape hatch that didn't exist. That night I barely slept. Not from anxiety this time, but from pure adrenaline. For the first time in years, my brain was fully awake. I pulled out my old notebooks and started writing. Real ideas, actual solutions, the kind of strategic thinking I used to do before every meeting became a game of dodging blame and managing Derek's ego. Tomorrow would change everything. I arrived at Peachtree Coffee 5 minutes early. Robert Sterling was already there, sitting at a corner table with a legal pad, a MacBook Pro, and the kind of focused intensity that built billion-dollar companies. No assistant, no entourage, just him and what looked like serious business. "Jard Nolita," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Let's get straight to it." He slid a manila folder across the small table. "We've been auditing our vendor relationships across all Sterling properties. What we've found is concerning." I opened the folder. Spreadsheets, performance metrics, client feedback surveys. A comprehensive analysis of training providers across his entire portfolio. The numbers painted a picture of mediocrity wrapped in premium pricing. "Your preparation for yesterday's presentation was the best we've encountered in 2 years," Robert continued, his steel-gray eyes never leaving my face. "But more importantly, we know it was your work, not Derek's." I raised an eyebrow. "How?" He smiled, not smug but knowing. "You'd be amazed what gets discussed in procurement meetings when consultants think no one's listening. Your name came up frequently as the secret weapon behind Apex's better work." I laughed, a short, dry sound that surprised us both. "So what exactly are you proposing, Mr. Sterling?" He leaned forward, his voice lowering to the tone reserved for major decisions. "We're not offering you a job, Jard Nolita. We're offering you a partnership. Quiet for now but substantial. You'd consult directly with Sterling Dynamics on organizational development. No middle management, no Derek, no corporate politics." My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. "I'd need to establish an LLC." "Already anticipated," he said, sliding another document across the table. "Our legal team can connect you with incorporation specialists. You'll audit our current training vendors, identify inefficiencies, and help us build something better." Then he added the detail that made my coffee taste like victory. "Starting with this. The final document was a vendor list for all Sterling Dynamics properties. Halfway down the page, highlighted in yellow, Apex Learning Solutions, flagged for comprehensive review. This wasn't charity. This wasn't pity hiring. This was a door opening to a room I'd been locked out of for 12 years. "What's the timeline?" I asked. "Aggressive," Robert replied. "We want preliminary findings in 2 weeks. Full recommendations by month's end." "And Jard Nolita." He closed his laptop with decisive finality. "This stays confidential until we're ready to make moves. Corporate restructuring requires surgical precision." I nodded, already mentally cataloging everything I knew about Apex's shoddy practices, recycled content, and inflated pricing. "Understood." As I drove home, my phone was already buzzing with messages. Text from Derek. "Where did you go? Client wants to reschedule." Email from Amanda at the front desk. "Mr. Sterling asked for your direct contact info. Should I give it to him?" Too late, Derek. The train had already left the station. I spent that evening setting up Rodriguez Strategic Consulting LLC online, designing a simple website, and drafting the most important audit plan of my career. By midnight, I had a business bank account and a registered business address. Derek's empire was about to crumble, and he didn't even know it yet. 2 days later, I walked into Sterling Dynamics corporate headquarters in Midtown Atlanta with a guest badge and a laptop loaded with forensic spreadsheets. The 23rd floor felt like mission control for a space program. All glass walls, clean lines, and the kind of focused energy that actually builds things instead of just talking about building them. Linda Chen, Sterling's chief operating officer, met me at the elevator. No small talk, no icebreakers, just a firm handshake and "welcome aboard." Conference room C has everything you requested. Everything was an understatement. Financial records, training completion rates, employee feedback surveys, incident reports. A treasure trove of data that would make any consultant salivate. But more importantly, it was evidence of systematic failure disguised as premium service. I dove deep into Apex Learning Solutions' work across Sterling's portfolio. What I found was corporate archaeology, layers of recycled PowerPoints, copy-paste assessments, and training modules that hadn't been updated since the Obama administration. The deeper I dug, the clearer the pattern became. Derek's firm had been coasting on reputation and relationship management while delivering bargain basement quality at luxury prices. Compliance modules with outdated regulations. Safety training that ignored industry best practices. Leadership development programs built from generic templates you could buy online for $49.99. Meanwhile, my LinkedIn notifications exploded. Former colleagues were reaching out like they could smell change in the air. "Heard you're doing exciting things," wrote Catherine from HR. "Coffee soon," messaged Tony from Business Development. They weren't just curious. They sensed blood in the water. I clicked over to Apex's client portal, using access credentials that Derek had never bothered to change. Their upcoming project calendar told the whole story. 3 major proposals in limbo, 2 contracts under review, and 1 glaring absence. Sterling Dynamics wasn't listed anywhere. They'd been quietly removed from the preferred vendor list. Derek probably didn't even know yet. My phone buzzed. Text from Robert Sterling. "How's the audit progressing?" I responded. "Worse than you thought. Can we schedule a briefing? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Bring the ugly details." That evening, I transformed my findings into something devastating. A color-coded risk assessment that would make Sterling's board of directors reach for their blood pressure medication. Every failure labeled with impact levels. Red tags meant immediate replacement required. Guess which vendor dominated the red category? The next afternoon, I presented my preliminary findings to Sterling's executive committee. Not in some generic conference room, but in their actual boardroom. Mahogany table, leather chairs, and windows overlooking half of Atlanta. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, clicking to my first slide. "We have a systemic vendor problem." The data spoke for itself. Apex Learning Solutions had underperformed on every meaningful metric while charging premium rates for substandard work. Employee satisfaction scores consistently ranked in the bottom quartile. Compliance training was so outdated it actually created legal liability. One executive, Sterling's general counsel, looked up from his notes. "How long has this been going on?" "Based on the patterns," I replied. "Approximately 4 years. Maybe longer." Linda Chen closed her portfolio with a definitive snap. Recommendations. I clicked to my final slide. Immediate contract termination and vendor replacement. The room went quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet. Decisive quiet. Derek's world was about to end, and he still didn't see it coming. The Sterling Dynamics Vendor Excellence Summit filled the ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton in Buckhead. 300 attendees, including procurement executives, training directors, and consulting firm representatives from across the Southeast. I stood at the podium in a tailored navy suit, looking out at an audience that included several former colleagues, and one very uncomfortable Derek sitting in the back row. My presentation was titled, "When Training Becomes Infrastructure: Building Sustainable Learning Ecosystems." No fluff, no corporate buzzwords, just data-driven insights about what actually worked versus what looked good in PowerPoint presentations. I clicked through case studies showing measurable improvements in employee performance, safety compliance, and operational efficiency. Every metric was real, every success story verified. The audience was taking notes like their careers depended on it. Effective training isn't about vendor relationships or premium pricing, I said, making eye contact with decision-makers throughout the room. It's about outcomes, measurement, and continuous improvement based on actual data. The standing ovation lasted 90 seconds. Afterward, during the networking reception, I was approached by executives from companies across multiple industries. Business cards flowed like champagne, each one representing new opportunities and partnerships. Jard Nolita Rodriguez, said the CEO of Atlanta Medical Systems, shaking my hand. We need to talk. Our training programs are stuck in 2015. I'd like to schedule a consultation, added the operations director from Georgia Pacific. Your framework could revolutionize our safety protocols. Derek lingered near the dessert table, nursing a whiskey and looking like someone who just watched his house burn down. Our eyes met across the room. I raised my wine glass slightly. Not in mockery, but in acknowledgement of how far we'd both traveled from that conference room confrontation 6 months ago. He didn't return the gesture. The next morning, I was in Robert Sterling's corner office, reviewing expansion plans for our training initiatives across Sterling's entire portfolio. 16 companies, 47 locations, over 12,000 employees. My frameworks would touch every aspect of their operations. There's one more thing, Robert said, sliding a final document across his desk. Partnership agreement. You'd have equity stake in the consulting division we're spinning off. Sterling Learning Solutions, with you as founding partner and chief strategy officer. I read through the terms. Equity participation, profit sharing, full creative control over methodology and implementation. After 12 years of building someone else's empire, I was finally building my own. 6 months later, Sterling Learning Solutions had landed contracts with 8 major corporations. My team had grown from just me to 15 specialized consultants. We were profitable, growing, and delivering results that actually mattered. Derek's company closed quietly on a Tuesday in November. No announcements, no farewell parties, just locked doors and forwarded phone numbers. I heard through the grapevine that he'd moved to Phoenix to work for his brother-in-law's marketing firm. I didn't celebrate his failure. I was too busy building something better. Standing in my new office overlooking Atlanta's skyline, I realized something profound. I hadn't just changed careers. I'd changed the entire game. The woman who used to fix other people's problems had become the person others called when they wanted to build solutions that lasted. That's the real power of saying no. It creates space for saying yes to something extraordinary.